Hello everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today we're going to explore the story of Truong, a man who lost his memory only to realise that the truth behind his past and the danger surrounding him may lie within his own unit, while Tieu stands by his side as his only safe haven. If you find this story intriguing, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. Truong keeps staring at the document in his hands, his eyes tracing each line again and again, as if the words might suddenly explain themselves if he looks long enough. The content feels strangely familiar, yet painfully distant, like something written by him, but by a version of himself he can no longer reach. There is no signature at the bottom, only a red stamp. He lifts his head and asks quietly if this really is the document he once wrote. Hao answers without hesitation. Yes. She points directly at the stamp and explains that it is the official stamp of the unit. She knows for certain because it is identical to the one the superiors had made for her back then. Truong's fingers tighten slightly around the paper. He asks if he himself had ever used this stamp before. Hao nods again. He did. That confirmation makes the air feel heavier. Truong pauses, then asks the question that has been forming in his mind. Other than him, who else could have used the stamp? Hao shakes her head. No one. Using it required both authority and direct approval. It wasn't something an ordinary cadre could touch. At that moment, suspicion quietly turns into pressure. A realization creeps in, slow but relentless. If the stamp was used, and he has no memory of doing so, then the person behind it must have been someone very close. Someone inside the unit. Someone he once trusted. The room suddenly feels smaller. The walls don't move, but Truong feels as if he's being tightly wrapped inside an invisible net. Memories of loyalty, shared work, and long days in the office clash violently with the doubts rising in his chest. A thin strip of light falls across the documents on the desk. Truong clenches his hand, knuckles whitening. Across from him, Hao watches in silence, worry written clearly on her face. Inside Truong, emotions surge. He thinks about his past years of work, the colleagues he once considered brothers. A part of him desperately hopes this clue will finally break through the darkness surrounding his accident. Yet the pressure on his shoulders feels crushing, like an invisible weight he can't shake off. The bond he once shared with his comrades makes it even harder to accept what he's beginning to suspect. The silence grows thick. Truong can hear his own heartbeat, loud and steady, echoing in his ears. His eyes scan the lines again, searching for hidden lies between the words. Hao's presence feels like a fragile anchor, keeping him grounded as his thoughts spiral. The shadows in the room seem to stretch and overlap, mirroring his doubts. Suspense builds quietly. His hope is faint, but it refuses to die. After a long pause, Truong asks who replaced him after he was transferred. Hao answers that it was Huang Van Tuan. Truong nods, then asks how many cadres were in the agency at the time. 20, she replies. He continues, his questions precise and controlled. Who were his direct subordinates back then? Hao lists them, herself, Deng, Tuan, and another cadre who was later disciplined for poor waste management. She hesitates before adding that this person used to be competitive and jealous of Truong, though he eventually learned his lesson. Truong listens carefully, his expression unreadable. He asks if anyone else had reason to be jealous of him. Hao admits that there were a few cadres who felt that way, mostly because Truong held a position of power and was often rewarded for his work. He pours her a glass of water and hands it to her, his movements calm but deliberate. He repeats the list of names, making sure he hasn't missed anyone. Then he asks if he can take the documents home to review them more carefully. Hao agrees. She explains that she hasn't reported this matter to anyone else, except for the comrade who helped her search for the documents. This moment marks a clear shift. Suspicion hardens into determination. Truong knows that if he wants the truth, he has to dig deeper on his own. At the same time, regret creeps in. He never thought jealousy and rivalry could poison the working environment he once believed in so deeply. The desk in front of him is cluttered with papers, stacked and scattered without order, a reflection of the chaos in his mind. His bond with Hao makes his instructions more careful, more sincere. Loyalty and jealousy stand in stark contrast, like two forces pulling him in opposite directions. Truong's eyes sharpen as he gathers the documents. His hand trembles just slightly as he holds them. Hao nods, fully understanding the weight of what he's about to do. The atmosphere turns tense, heavy with unspoken danger. Inside, Truong feels the pressure from his former colleagues, but there is also a fragile hope that this quiet investigation will finally lead him to the truth, even if it means confronting painful betrayals. Doubt whispers through the room as his fingers brush over the names on the list. Hao's calm assurance becomes a small light in the uncertainty. The narrow space seems to echo with memories of old rivalries, pushing the tension higher. Hope and sorrow intertwine, and Truong's resolve slowly hardens against enemies he cannot yet see. He then reminds Hao of something that has been bothering him, the fact that she was suddenly transferred when she was investigating his case. Hao confirms it. She heard the transfer orders but never knew who issued them. It happened twice. Each time she was close to finding a clue, she was moved away. With her position, there was nothing she could do. Truong praises her efforts. Hao admits she has long suspected that someone had been interfering from the very beginning, deliberately blocking the investigation. It felt like an invisible hand was always stopping her just as she was getting close to the truth. He asks her to keep everything secret for now. Without solid evidence, acting too soon could be dangerous, especially for her. Hao agrees immediately. Truong tells her he will take the documents home. He asks for the name of the comrade who searched with her. She answers that it was Dung. He confirms that Dung still works at the same agency. Hao adds that Dung has been there 1 year longer than she has and is known for being quick and reliable. Truong asks her to arrange a meeting with Dung. She agrees without hesitation. He asks if she has told Dung about his return. Hao shakes her head. She followed his instruction and told no one. Truong nods, satisfied, and praises her again. He tells her to continue working as usual and not to draw attention. If he needs anything, he will contact her. Hao observes that although Truong doesn't remember anything since his return, his demeanour feels exactly the same as before. Truong gives a faint smile and says habits often remain, even when memories are gone. She reminds him to take the documents home and to call her if he needs help. He agrees, then asks if he has wasted her time. She smiles and says no. She's on the afternoon shift anyway. Before she leaves, Truong asks her to take good care of Tieu, especially since she's pregnant with their first child. Hao promises she will. Truong thanks her, says that's all for now, and reminds her to call if she needs anything. Hao excuses herself and leaves the room. As the door slowly closes behind her, Truong is left alone. A troubling thought lingers in his mind. If someone truly harmed him, he hopes it wasn't someone from his own unit. Shadows stretch across the floor as Hao walks away. Truong's gaze remains fixed on the door for a long moment. The room is empty, yet filled with echoes of warnings and unspoken threats. Between caution and urgency, Truong feels torn. Somewhere deep inside, he still holds on to a fragile hope that the truth will come to light, and that not everyone he once trusted has become his enemy. Truong carefully places the documents into his bag and leaves the office as quietly as he can. By the time he gets home, the sun is already lowering, bathing the small house in a soft, familiar glow. The moment he steps inside, the tension in his chest eases just a little. This place feels different from the office, warmer, safer. Here, his name isn't a title or a position. It's simply Truong, Tieunu's husband. Tieu looks up when she hears him. She's sitting near the table sorting dried sweet potatoes. When she sees his expression, she immediately senses that something is weighing on him. She doesn't rush him. She never does. Instead, she gently asks if everything is okay. Truong sits down across from her and exhales slowly. He tells her about meeting Hao and asking her to help search for old documents. Some were found, but there are many things he still doesn't fully understand. With his memory gone, even the technical parts of his old work feel like a foreign language. Tieu listens quietly, her hands resting protectively on her belly. She then remembers something from the day before. Hao had gone on a business trip and didn't lead Truong to meet her then. Instead, they coincidentally met on the same day Truong took Dui for a haircut. She mentions it softly, as if piecing together small fragments of a puzzle. Truong nods, distracted. He tells her not to worry too much. Work now feels far more complicated than it used to. Back then, he handled things easily. Now, even thinking about it makes his head feel heavy. Tieu immediately grows concerned and asks if he has a headache. He shakes his head and smiles faintly. What he really enjoys now, he says, is going to the fields with her, harvesting crops, walking among familiar hills and mountains. Those things don't require memories or titles. Still, he admits that he worries. If he can't remember his work, how can he return to it? Then he glances at the dried sweet potatoes and chuckles. He says maybe he doesn't need to go back at all. These potatoes look chewy, golden, and beautiful. Tieu laughs and says she plans to let him try some later. She sighs softly and says she hopes their lives can stay peaceful like this, without any incidents. Truong agrees. That's all he wants too. He tells her to sit down and eat first. He gently reminds her that all he truly hopes for is that she, the baby and Dui stay safe. Nothing else matters as much. Tieu brings out a bowl of strawberries and offers them to him. He waves his hand lightly and tells her to eat naturally, not to overdo things. He doesn't dream of anything big anymore. Living peacefully, picking and selling produce, not having to find a new job, that already sounds perfect. She hesitates and admits she worries about his future. What if he never returns to his old work? Will he regret it? Truong smiles calmly. He says they should let things happen naturally. If fate wants him to return, he will. If not, he won't force it. Right now, building a small farm and living simply already makes him happy. He's more worried about her, not himself. He reassures her again. Health and safety are enough. Tomorrow, he says, they can make sticky rice together. He asks if she prefers sticky rice or cakes. He personally likes sticky rice, but they've eaten it quite often lately, so maybe cake would be good too. Tieu says she dried some peanuts and plans to use them as filling. Truong laughs and tells her anything she makes will be delicious. Eating food they make themselves feels wonderful. He asks if the food suits his taste. She teases him, saying he's actually gained weight. He laughs and says that just proves how good her cooking is. She tells him if anything doesn't suit his taste, he should say so and she'll adjust. He nods, understanding. He then asks about the dried sweet potatoes she's preparing for Tet, maybe even turning them into candied treats. She confirms they're tasty now, dried under just the right sunlight. He reminds her not to do anything too heavy. If there's hard work, she should tell him and they'll do it together. She's not alone anymore. He calls Dui's mother to come drink some water, then casually mentions that this morning, when he took Dui to school, the teacher said Dui has been eating better and playing happily with friends. The new haircut even earned him some playful teasing. It's a small thing, but Truong feels genuinely happy. He hopes the baby will also be obedient and kind, just like Tieu. She asks if there's anything else she should help with in the afternoon. He says in the next few days he doesn't plan to go anywhere. He wants to focus on the harvest. The orchard still has oranges, vegetables and apples. The tangerines and san oranges won't ripen until closer to Tet. Tieu smiles and says then they'll have plenty to eat later. Truong asks about her health, whether she feels different, any back pain or sore limbs. She admits her back aches a little, but that's normal since the baby's getting bigger. He immediately tells her to let him know if the pain gets worse. Today's potatoes are delicious, he adds, praising her skill. She says she learned from the farmer uncles nearby. He compliments her again, saying they're perfect for making candied potatoes, much safer than buying from outside. She urges him to eat more. He takes a bite and nods approvingly. Sweet, chewy, fragrant. He says dried potatoes taste even better, like eating honey, and they don't hurt the throat. He thinks Tieu will love them too. In that quiet moment, Truong feels something shift inside him. The heavy worries about work fade slightly, replaced by a deep sense of peace. This house feels like a nest, sheltering them from the chaos outside. Gentle light filters through the window as they talk softly. For the first time in a long while, his heart feels calm. The shadows of uncertainty are still there, but they no longer dominate the room. His thoughts drift back to a year ago. Back then, he had asked Tieu a simple but life-changing question. Did she want them to become a family? Tieu had agreed without hesitation. Being his wife and walking the rest of life's road together was enough for her. He remembered telling her that from that moment on, they were family. Whatever clothes they wore, whatever difficulties they faced, they would share it all. He promised to always encourage her. Tieu had been so happy that day, her smile brighter than anything he could remember. He promised he wouldn't let her suffer hardships. She promised to work hard and make up for the time when he had helped her through her most difficult days. He told her he didn't need her to work too much. All he wanted was for her to be healthy and happy. When she asked if he would be willing to become Tieu's father, he agreed without hesitation. He promised to be a good husband and a responsible father, never letting either of them feel disadvantaged. Tieu needed a father's love, and Truong vowed to give it. Tieu said Tieu was lucky to have a father like him. Truong promised to teach and nurture the boy properly, guiding him to grow into a good person. Together they would raise him with care. She had said that with him by her side, Tieu would grow up better. Truong agreed. From that day on, she was no longer a single mother. They were a family of 3. He had planned to buy land there, not return to the city, and build a house to welcome her and Tieu. Tieu agreed, saying they would work together to build their nest. He told her hardships didn't matter as long as she and Tieu were healthy and happy. Later, he even planned to ask around about land prices. She told him not to worry, to let him handle the hard things, and to confide in her when needed. Those memories overlap with the present. Truong standing at the school gate, greeting the teacher, watching Tieu play on the slide, laughing freely. Life felt simple then, pure. As the flashback fades, Truong looks at Tieu again. Despite the dangers and uncertainties waiting outside, he knows one thing for sure. No matter what truths he uncovers, no matter who betrayed him, this family, this warmth, is what he must protect at all costs. After losing his memory, Truong begins to uncover fragments of a past he can no longer recognize. While reviewing old documents with Hao, he realizes that official records bearing his authority may have been manipulated, leading him to suspect betrayal from within his own unit. As jealousy, power struggles, and hidden interference slowly surface, Truong decides to investigate in secret. Knowing the truth could endanger those helping him. Away from the tension of the agency, he returns home to Tieu, whose quiet strength, pregnancy, and simple rural life give him a sense of peace and purpose. Between unresolved dangers at work and the warmth of family, Truong stands at a crossroads, torn between uncovering a painful truth and protecting the fragile happiness he has built with Tieu and their children.